What's the best foundation for bridal makeup? This is one of those questions that I see asked so often, and today I'd love to give you my tips and recommendations. Hey there, I'm Sue Louise McLaurin. I've been a freelance makeup artist for 20 years now, and I'm passionate about helping the next generation of makeup artists become more successful freelancers. Now, if you've watched many of my videos, you'll know that I normally talk about the business side of being a successful makeup artist. But this is one of those questions that comes up over and over in all of the different Facebook groups, so today I wanted to address that. Now, before I start, two things. Number one, this is not a sponsored post, so any products that I recommend here are ones that I actually use and have used in my kit, many of them for many, many years. And secondly, this is one of those questions that if you ask 10 artists, you'll probably get at least 8 different responses. So before I go ahead and give you my recommendations, I'm going to give you 4 things that you want to consider before you listen to other people's recommendations and before you make any choices. So number 1 is what sort of work you're doing and who are the clients that are sitting in your chair. Obviously, if your ideal clients are younger brides, then they might have problem skin. They might prefer a different look to if your normal regular clients are more mature brides. So that is going to be the first consideration. The second consideration is going to be, what is your signature style? What sort of makeup do you get booked for? What sort of makeup do you prefer to do? And what do you do most of the time? Does your work tend towards a more natural, no makeup look? Or do your clients book you because you do a more full coverage and more glam, heavier makeup looks? Number 3 is going to be, what sort of a climate do you live in? Do you have considerations with humidity, which is going to obviously lead to perhaps perspiration and the makeup not lasting as long? Or do you live in a colder, drier climate? And in that case, you need a product which is going to be a little bit more hydrating. When I first started as a makeup artist, I was living and working in far north Queensland, which is a very tropical climate. And it took me a while to find the right foundation that would perform best for my clients, most of whom were not from that area, so who felt the effects of the humidity even more. And the fourth consideration is anything to do with skin conditions or skin type. So again, this is relating to things like dry skin or problem skin. So all these 4 are things that you want to consider before you are making any decisions. Now, there's no one foundation that is going to suit every client that sits in your chair. And for this reason, I usually recommend to my students and anyone who asks that you need to have a variety of foundations in your kit. Now, I know when you're first starting out, building your kit can be a really expensive exercise. But here's the thing, you don't need to have every shade of every foundation that you carry in your kit. And I generally tend to have 3 shades for each foundation that I use. Now, remember that I'm in Australia, so the vast majority, probably 95% of the clients that sit in my chair are Caucasian. So I have a small number of Asian clients and an even smaller number of darker skinned clients. Of course, I do carry a foundation that is going to cater for everyone that sits in my chair, but I also carry correctors so that using color theory, I can mix and match and create the perfect foundation for everyone that sits in my chair. So as a general guide, I like to use a pale pink undertone foundation, a pale yellow undertone foundation, and a darker yellow undertone foundation. That one is particularly useful for those clients who have had a spray tan. And I generally find that with those 3 shades that I can mix and match and suit probably about 95% of the clients that sit in my chair. For that other 5%, I do have a few extra products, and as I mentioned, I do also have color correctors so that I can use my color theory to create the right foundation for them. And now if you're not too sure about colour theory, you can head on up and check out the interview that I did with Terry Tomlinson, who is an expert in all things colour theory, and we discussed that quite a bit in that interview. Now, obviously, if you want to be a versatile makeup artist and if you want to get booked for more jobs and more brides, you need to be able to cater for everyone who sits in your chair. So that is really important. So now down to the recommendations. So firstly, you need to have a foundation that is what I call your workhorse. So this is a foundation that is going to suit the majority of people that sit in your chair. It's one that you reach for all of the time because you know it's going to perform under almost all of the circumstances that you are going to be using it for. It's something that's buildable and long lasting. And for this foundation, for the last, probably 5 to 10 years, I have been using Elementwo Canvas Blend. Now, interestingly, this is actually a foundation that was created for use with airbrush. I gave up airbrushing about 6 or 7 years ago now, after I had been airbrushing almost exclusively for about 5 years. It's a silicone-based foundation. As I said, it's designed for airbrush, but I don't use it with the airbrush. I apply it firstly with a flat foundation brush, and then I buff it into the skin with a more buffing brush. I find that it sits beautifully on the skin and buffs in really well and creates that kind of a demi-matte finish so it looks like skin. It's a long-lasting foundation, you can layer it for more coverage, and it's self-setting, which means that you don't need to powder it. Of course, if your client tends to more oily skin, you can powder it for a more longer-lasting finish. The other thing I love about this foundation, and that you should be able to do with any Workhorse foundation that you choose, is you should be able to sheer it out. And I can create that beautiful dewy skin look by mixing this foundation with a product like a MAC strobe cream or some sort of an illuminating product. The other really important thing about your Workhorse foundation is, of course, it needs to be something that photographs really well. And Elementwo has never let me down in this area as well. Some of the other more common Workhorse foundations that I hear of other makeup artists using are Face Atelier foundation and Estee Lauder Double Wear. So they're another couple that you can check out as well. The second foundation that you want to have in your kit is a more full coverage. It doesn't have to be a completely full coverage unless you use that sort of a foundation a lot for your clients, but you do want to have something in your kit that you can layer with your Workhorse or that you can use for those times when you do require a more full coverage foundation. So of course, when you're working with a bridal party, you might have that one bridesmaid who really likes a more full coverage. You might have someone whose skin conditions require that you use a more full coverage foundation. Now, ideally, whichever foundation you choose for this category should be something that plays well with your Workhorse so that you can just spot apply it if required. So my favourite more full coverage foundation is Cinema Secret's Ultimate Foundation. I've been using this one since very, very early on. This is a silicone-based cream foundation with the addition of wax, which helps it to last really, really long time and stops it from breaking down, even in the most humid weather. Now, when I first started using this, I thought how weird it was to be using a cream foundation in humid conditions. However, I believe it's the addition of the wax that helps this foundation to hold up really well. Other full coverage foundations that other makeup artists recommend include Makeup Atelier Paris, the waterproof foundation, and also Estee Lauder Double Wear. Now, thirdly, you want to have something that works really well for your more mature clients. We all know that mothers of the bride can be amongst the most challenging clients that sit in your chair. Now, this is not because they are difficult clients, but I think that once we reach a certain age, as women, we get a little bit set in our ways with what we like in terms of our makeup. And remember, for more mature clients, less is generally more. Now, ideally, your Workhorse will work really well for these sort of clients, and Elementwo is beautiful on more mature clients. When I do need a bit more coverage for a more mature client, the foundation that I've been using lately is the Mercier Radiance Perfecting Foundation. This is a beautiful foundation which can be layered. It is a slightly illuminating foundation, so it helps to blur any fine lines that those more mature clients may have, and it is buildable and is long lasting as well. And lastly, as you progress in your career, you may want to consider carrying a VIP foundation. So this is that foundation that you'll use when you start working with celebrity clients, but it's also a great one to pull out when you do have that really discerning client, or that client that knows a lot about makeup and you kind of need to impress her. I've used Chanel for years as my VIP foundation, but what I do find a little bit frustrating about Chanel is that they're constantly changing their formulations, and it always takes me a little bit of time to get used to the new products that they're creating. Another popular VIP foundation that a lot of makeup artists use is the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk. So there you have it. They are some of my recommendations for the best foundation for bridal makeup. You might have a different foundation that you find works really well. I'd love to hear about it. I'm always interested in trying new products. So if you do have something else that you think works really well, please pop it in the comments down below. I hope that you found this video helpful. Please give me a thumbs up, drop a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so that you'll be notified next time a video is uploaded. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.